What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. This is Synergy here. We're actually going to be talking about some tips and tricks for beginner players early game. This is only going to really be for beginners. This was definitely requested by a lot of people within the Discord, DMing me and so forth. So without further ado, let's get started. So we're going to start off with gear and weapon early game. So this part is actually very important because as you actually go through the story, which I highly recommend for you to do so, um, a lot of people have looked at other people's videos and they always talk about recommended gear sets for Vanguard or Breacher or Juggernaut. This is just going to be just in general. So let's say, for example, you can find like, I don't know, one shot or even Fury sets. Sometimes by finding long-term or even fearless sets actually do help out as long as it's firepower, because again, Vanguard and Breacher are both firepower specialists. They need DPS and they need firepower. So even if you don't find Fury and One Shot, or at least other ones like Phalanx, you can always go with a shield or fearless or sometimes even expert. Um, Obviously the talents all vary on what you actually need, which I recommend the talent duality. I recommend crossfire, inspiration, but of course those things all really depend on RNG, but it doesn't really matter in early game, because in early game you would obviously want to have survivability while also doing damage. So, you know, shield and fearless sets can actually be useful for the damage reduction and also the armor and health as well too. Of course, the attributes for these particular gear sets all vary, but what you necessarily need in early game is critical hit damage, critical hit chance, um, and if you can't find that, multi-shot would weapon multi-shot would be useful, as well as headshot damage. Remember that when you are Vanguard, it's easy for you to be able to use your abilities to give you that extra damage, especially in early game, but you also really want to be able to survive too, because that's necessarily what matters. Even if you didn't find Fearless or um, I guess shield or even long term, I would just recommend any of the gear sets that actually have firepower, because that's pretty much what you're really going for those particular builds. And then for the weapons, obviously, if you are Vanguard and you're looking to actually utilize the best weapons possible for early game, of course, they give you T0 weapons. My recommendation for T0 weapons would probably be the Vector, the early stage Vector. Now, if you're lucky enough to get crit damage or headshot damage or even Performer on it, it would be nice, whether it be a blue or purple or even a green. It doesn't necessarily matter. You can go with the converted SMG9 as well too, or when you get to the stages where you get to T1, which is not until 30 to 35, you can get the Copperhead. The Copperhead has less of a magazine, but it's also strong. I mean, the Vector and the Copperhead both have less of a magazine. If not that, you can get uh, the police T281, which is actually pretty good. It's a great blast weapon, especially for end game as well too, or the AUG. The early game AUG is also really good as well too, the PP19. But make sure that those particular weapons have the attributes and the talents associated in the combination of your gear sets as well too. Um, Aside from those particular weapons, if you actually wanted to go for shotgun, um, I also recommend, if you, because you're not gonna get the double barrel, because the double barrel is a T2 weapon. So if you can't find the double barrel and you happen to get the M, I just call it the M because aside from the uh, the numbers or whatever the case is, but if you get this particular shotgun with steady reload, it actually is really useful. It hits really, really, really hard. And if not, the ACS 12 is actually really useful. Get lucky enough to have steady reload and performer on the ACS 12 or even the KSG. The KSG is the next best thing as well too. These particular ones, obviously, you're gonna see that they're high graded because it's for me, but for early game, they'll come out as like purples or blues or whatever the case may be. But as long as they have those roles, like the attributes of critical hit damage and multi-shot damage or chance, along with the talents of steady reload and performer. Some shotguns don't have that, but as opposed to assault rifles, you're not going to be able to find the police M4 or the enhanced ACR or even the lightweight. So the next best thing is the ACR. Finding ACR with strain on it is really good. There's also ACRs that might have a possible chance of unhinge, but even if you don't find that, as long as the attributes, as I previously explained, are actually up there, critical hit damage, critical hit chance, multi-shot, whichever. MK16 as well too, that's another recommendation. If you can't find the MK16, you can also find the early game classic AK-47 as well too. That's just from levels 1 to 20 depending on where you are at in the game. As for LMGs, I know a lot of people like to use LMGs. My best recommendations for LMGs would be the MG5. The MG5 actually is very, very strong, and even when you pop your ability on Vanguard, it actually hits like a truck, especially in early game. If you find one with tactical reload or tormental downpour, would actually be useful. Sometimes you get lucky enough to get damage trade. Damage trade is also very useful as well too. If not that, the Lewis, you can find that as well too. Blood for blood's not bad, but of course, again, you actually have to have those attributes. And even if you don't have those attributes, you can also try to use or utilize the talents as well too. The other one is the NVEG. The NVEG is a very great shredding LMG with the right rolls and everything. Obviously, it's like a truck as well too. Of course, you would find that purple or even blue, whichever, but as long as you're lucky enough to get one. And you know, obviously, when you're in early game, you're going to be doing like the missions and so forth. So my best recommendation to you is to farm the missions repeatedly, because even though that the daily cap is there and you won't necessarily get the extra XP that you're supposed to, and of course, you know, if the stuff drops purple for the gear or the weapons, at least you'd be farming for the weapons that you actually need as well. So even if they don't necessarily have the right roles, just, you know, continue grinding. Again, it's RNG oriented, so you know, you might be lucky. A very important thing for early game is weapon proficiency. Each weapon actually has a certain amount of milestones, or at least requirements for you to reach past those particular levels. You do that with shotguns, you do that with ARs, you do that with MRs, you do that with SMGs, LMGs, and so forth. When you start building up the level for these particular weapons, whether you're maxing it out or getting it to 5, you not only get Phoenix credits for each milestone, but you're also getting weapon damage, skill intensity, and the power score increases as well too. So I recommend doing this early game, even if you have a weapon that is blue or common or whatever rarity it is. It's very, very, very important that you actually utilize this to get the most out of your build. Gear and weapon mods are actually also important too. Disregard the fact that they're all gold. The example for this part of the video is the fact that if you are Breacher or Vanguard and you want to go and for the most DPS for early game, even if you get blue, whatever rarity it is, as long as it's firepower and as long as the attributes are associated with the weapons that you have, at least for, you know, the attachments for the weapons. Gear obviously is very different. I would definitely look for ones that have all weapon damage, and then the second one to be the related attribute for your particular weapon, because it's always important to match that. And if you can't find that and you have one that actually is firepower, which is on a different type of piece that's engineering or toughness, I would utilize that. The more firepower, the better. Of course, the same thing for the gear mods. The gear mods obviously have to have firepower. The more firepower you have is the better, but make sure you look for ones, even if they're blue or whatever rarity, that actually have health and armor, because you obviously would want to have health and armor. And the places that you would actually find this particularly would be opening up the map and the hostile nest. So on different days, and when you get to a certain level, I believe it's 25 to 30, you open up the ones on challenging on specific days. When reset happens at 5 p.m., you either open the one on challenging or heroic. The heroic one obviously opens up at 30, level 30, but it only spawns on certain days. But I recommend farming those things if you need to get the best weapon mods and armor mods possible. The next is OS protocols, but early game. So obviously you see that I have close quarter menace, which is probably one of the best ones to run for Vanguard, as well as tactical pistol arrow. Obviously, you know, if you can't find that, and you get something called suppressive fire, I would definitely run that for early game as well too. If you can't find that, obviously you can go with this next best one as well too. This one is actually very useful for Vanguard because you're always critting, but you're gonna get to a certain point in the game where you're gonna be able to unlock bounties, to be able to acquire the ones that you actually need. But if you don't find tactical pistol roller or close quarters menace, I would recommend combat reload, or even death from afar, because those ones obviously would be holding you up before, I guess, you get to get lucky enough for those close quarters menace and tactical pistol roll to drop for you. As for the main bounty drops every Thursday at 5 p.m. You have to be able to complete 3 before you get to the main bounty, and that's very, very important. It's going to ask you to do supply runs or outpost or whatever requirements it is. You complete all those 3 and do the main bounty, you have a chance to get a gold. After that, it's just nothing but non-stop purples as well. Next area we go into is DC for early game. This part actually is a bit difficult, but I'll try to explain the process as best as I can. Now, I've explained in a couple of videos that DC is probably the hardest thing to do in the game, because not only are you farming for chips or you have to go up against real players, it's definitely a lot harder than elite missions. When you get to a certain point in the game, it obviously would be a bit ridiculous, but so when you get to level 20, you obviously unlock the dark zone. 15, 20, somewhere around there. 25 is when you actually get the associated loot. This part, obviously, if you're going after certain specialists, obviously I can tell you which ones are the best, but for your sake, and I'll explain this a little bit during this DZ part of the video, is that even if you don't find the ones that are associated with the Vanguard build, like optimal awareness, armor train, and so forth, it's always going to spawn random, and it's always going to spawn random attributes as well too. But the best places to be able to go to are the hard landmarks, because the hard landmarks, or even the normal ones, drop purple pieces or purple chips or even blue chips. Even if you get blue chips, try to max them out as best as possible. Obviously that's very, very important. You will always want to be able to ensure that you actually max out those things best as possible. And then when you do get full, you can either go to the extraction or go to the safe house. Now the safe house, when you go to it, you only have 3 chances of actually being able to smuggle the loot out, right? And this resets every day, but only use this when you have the right chips that are associated with the attributes on it. Don't use this every single time. This is just only for emergency stuff. But when it comes down to it, farming the landmarks is basically less stressful. Obviously, you'll see people there. Sometimes they don't even go rogue. They'll be able to clear the landmarks with you, but it's easier to do by yourself. And with each landmark, you get the EXP. Obviously, if you're at your bag and you see the chips that you don't want, essentially, the beauty of this is that if you dismantle it in the dark zone, you get the DC chips. This is only for chips, it's not the gear. So the chips, if you dismantle them in the dark zone, you get the DC coins or DC chips for the dark zone vendor. So you would just easily go and dismantle it, and voila, it's just completely gone. And that's that particular part. But as I specifically stated in the video, the reason why this part is important is, as I stated earlier on, you're always going to want to try to find, because the DZ chips and your gear go hand in hand in terms of the attributes. So the attributes, as I stated, weapon critical hit damage, weapon critical hit chance, weapon multi-shot, you have to have those in the attributes per chip, regardless of what it really is. Sometimes you'll get lucky enough to even get both per chip, like for example weapon critical hit damage or weapon multi-shot. If you get lucky enough to get those particular things, then you'll be set. But it's all RNG, and I only recommend to farm for that. And even if you don't get those particular DC chips, you can just continue to keep farming. So in conclusion, an endgame talk, obviously when you do all those particular things correctly and have an optimized build, there are various ways that you could be able to customize your build in the game. But before I actually forget, there was a reasonable announcement that actually came out that Division Resurgence is actually coming to Steam July 16th of this month. Now, the crazy part about this is that this is good news for people who actually wanted to play on Steam, that obviously don't want to deal with the Ubisoft Connect, and it also is good for Twitch streamers because they're actually going to have drops. So it might help out with in terms of viewership and in terms of growth as well too. So make sure you check that out. But when it comes down to, endgame stuff, I don't think that that's something that people should really worry about. I only hope that whatever I talked about in this particular video actually has been useful and it covers certain areas. The part that I left out that's actually very important, that I can be able to sit down with somebody and explain, is material and resources. Material resources, which is the green that you see there on the map, obviously they'll come to a certain point where you would need to obviously sell material to get the most money, because sometimes in early game you run out of money whether you're upgrading stuff or not. I recommend that you save that material, because in the New York vendor you could be able to sell those things. It's easy to obtain. For every mission, main mission, or even DZ, or even hostileness, you could be able to earn those fabric material used to that, and even dismantling weapons and gear that you don't necessarily need. But I know how hard it is early game, because obviously I played since the beta, and it could be rather tedious to actually get a really good build. But the reason why I say that you shouldn't necessarily stress out is because early game is for you to study your build and be able to build up your proficiency the best way possible. Another hidden part that people don't necessarily explain is that this game's only been out for 2.5 months. We're only in early stages. It's not like this game has been out for like 6 months, or it's a bit early, and it's not even a full game. Hopefully in the future it does, maybe in the next 2 or 3 months depending, but you still got a lot of time to be able to perfect your build, to study it and everything. And I just recommend to take your time. Obviously you don't need to speedrun to get a great build. You can get a great build over time. But again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. This is Synergy signing out. I hope I helped out as best as possible. Guys, take it easy. Peace out.